Hi everyone, it's Andrea. I hope you're having an awesome day. I wanted to give you a little preview of this week's project. It is a small patchwork drawstring bag that has some quilted or pieced panels here down the center. These are half square triangles, which I will show you how to prepare those very simply. And then we have 2 accent panels on each side. The bag is unique because it has these tabs across the top and these drawstring closure, which bring the top of the bag in and keep the contents secure. I think you have a lot of options when it comes to the ends of these straps. I think some beautiful beads on each end could add even more detail to this pretty pouch. So if this looks like something you would like to learn how to make, I will show you exactly how to make this. We are going to begin by crafting our 2 exterior panels, and you'll notice there is a quilted accent panel down the center here. We're going to start with that panel first, and then we will piece together the 2 side panels on this, notch out the corners, back that with some lightweight fusible interfacing to achieve a second pieced panel. So for each of those panels, you're going to need 6 2 1/4 inch squares. I recommend making 3 of those a light or white color and 3 of those a darker color for each panel. So in total you're going to need 6 light squares and 6 dark squares. And then we will pair up a light with a dark right sides facing and draw a line diagonally across each square. Mine is in red pen there. And then we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, stitch on the right and the left of that line, and then we'll be able to cut right on that line to create these half square triangles. This is a really fast, almost foolproof method of creating those half square triangles. So another little trick that I learned from my quilting friends in the friendship circle is to chain stitch these together. So I have already done the 3 that I used to create these 6 half square triangles because each of these creates 1 of these half square triangles. So what you would do if you had all 6 of them is pair them up right sides facing, draw your line diagonally, and then line them up on your machine deck, and you can assemble these pretty fast like that. So again, remember you're not stitching on the line, you are stitching to the right and the left of the line. When you are quilting, you do not use the back stitch. So as I come off the edge of that one, then I bring over the second one and just line up the lines. And then the third one. And so now I have these 3 joined together by the 1 thread, and I have stitched all the way down the right hand side of that diagonal line. Now I want to stitch down the opposite edge. So I have my remaining 3 half square triangles prepped. These are small enough that I can cut them with my nice scissors here, but normally you would position these on your cutting mat and you would use your clear acrylic ruler and line that up and cut right on that red line. Your line, of course, may be a different color, and then you can go ahead and cut the threads that join them. And just like that, I have my 6 half square triangles created. So the next thing I want to do is take all of these over to the iron and press the seam to the dark side. So just fold that over to whatever is the darker side and press that seam down. And then after you press, you should have your 6 squares ready to go. And so I have mine with the light on the top and the dark on the bottom. I like that look, so I think you should be consistent with both panels. So I am going to attach mine in the same way with that dark triangle towards the bottom and that light triangle towards the top. So you have to pay attention when you're doing this, but you're going to work 2 squares at a time there and position those right sides facing using a 1/4 inch stitch right along the bottom. And now you have 2 of those joined, so you'll pick up your next one in line and position that right sides facing on top of that top one in the sequence and stitch right across the top. And now you have 3 of them. You pick up the 4th one, right sides facing, line everything up nice, stitch right across the top. And then now it's time to press all the seams going in one direction along the back, so they should be all headed in a natural direction. That's fine to just press it in whatever direction they're headed. And then I have a pretty panel all pieced together. Everything's going in the same direction. Here's what it looks like on the back side. Now, if I were going to continue attaching this to another quilted panel, I would go ahead and clean up these little corners, but I'm going to be attaching to whole cloth, so I'm not going to worry about those little corners. So the next thing that I want to do is center this panel in between these 2 larger cuts of fabric. The bigger rectangle here measures 4 inches across by 9 1/4 inches tall. Basically, your panels should be the same height as this quilted panel for those of you that want to play with the measurements some. The smaller accent panel is 2.5 inches wide by 9 1/4 inches tall. And so I'm going to take this smaller panel and position it along the right hand edge of my quilted panel, and I'm going to line up the side there and the top and the bottom. I'm going to continue with that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to stitch from the top to the bottom to join. Okay, so now I have successfully joined the quilted panel to the smaller accent panel. Now I want to open this up and bring over my larger accent panel and position that right sides facing, lining up the larger panel with the longer edge of the quilted panel. And I'm going to stitch down that using the 1/4 inch seam allowance, So I have that 3-way panel. And now I have successfully joined all 3 panels. I want to head over to the iron and give this a good press. I'm going to be pressing these seams towards those whole cuts of fabric. And this is what my pretty panel looks like now. Now I want to fuse on a like size piece of Pellon 808 or 809. A lightweight fusible interfacing is ideal for this. I do imagine you could work with the SF101. I think also you could work with a light quilt batting as well. Please use what you have on hand. Just know the lighter it is, the better, because if you go with, say, something like Decoville Light, or even a worse choice would be Decoville Heavy, your drawstring will not function properly. So now that I have my like-sized piece of interfacing cut, I am going to clean up any stray threads here and then give this a good press and fuse that interfacing to the back of this second exterior panel. I have my second panel prepped. Now I want to notch 1-inch corners out of the bottom right and left hand corners of this panel. So I'm just going to use my first one as my template. If you are prepping your first one, you're going to want to use a ruler and a pen to mark your corners so that you do not overcut. And we're just notching out 1 inch out of each of those. Okay, so these panels should measure approximately 9 1/4 inches tall by 7 1/2 inches wide. You are going to want to cut your 2 interior panels to the exact measurements of your exterior panels, all right? So I think it's easiest to just lay your exterior panel right on top of your interior fabric and use that as your template. You will also be notching out the corners of those interior panels as well. So momentarily we are going to set aside our exterior and interior panels, and we are going to speed prep some straps. 2 of these straps are cut 3 inches wide by approximately 40-ish inches long. I call it a full cut. So 3 inches wide by the full cut of your quilt weight cotton, and then you're going to fold that into a 4-ply strap. If you are not familiar, that requires you to fold the long strap together, wrong sides facing, the whole length of the strap. Open that up and then bring the outer edges inward to meet on that center press line, and then fold that over again and press well. And that will create a nice skinny strap for you. You're going to need 2 of those. These will become the drawstrings on the bag. They may be too long. You'll have the option to trim them up, or if you prefer a longer strap, you'll be all set and you won't have to do anything but knot the ends after we stitch them. Then you're going to need 1 more even skinnier strap, also 4-ply. This strap is going to be cut to fashion the little tiny tabs at the top of the bag that the drawstring threads through. So this strap measures 2 inches wide by the full cut. So it is a little bit more challenging to press, but it is doable. Just go slow and try to keep your fingers ahead of the steam that may be coming out of your iron. So after you get all 3 of your straps pressed nice, then you're going to go ahead and stitch down the open edge first of the skinniest strap. That only gets one row of stitching. On the wider straps, which are the drawstrings, you can stitch down the open edge first and then the opposite edge. I do find for this whole project that a 2.5 inch stitch length is ideal. Alright, so I have both my drawstrings all stitched up. I'm going to set the drawstrings aside. I'm going to bring over one of the exterior panels and the little skinny strap that is going to be used to fashion the tabs at the top of the drawstring. Those tabs are going to be cut 2 inches long, and you are going to need 6 of them for each side, so 12 in total. And you will take those and fold them in half so that they create a little loop at the top, and that is what the drawstring will go through. So the raw edges are going to be aligned along the top edge of the exterior panel. And I have a little ruler here on my machine deck that I'm going to use. So you're going to put the first tab 1 inch in from the edge, then fold your second one and put that 1 inch in from the edge, and the clips are fabulous for this. And then approximately every 1 inch you can position another tab. So you should end up with 6 tabs spaced approximately 1 inch apart across the top of the panel. Now, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, go ahead and stitch across the top of that panel to secure all of those tabs in place. And that's what that looks like when you're done. Repeat that exact process for the second panel. Okay, so now I have 2 exterior panels, each with 6 little tabs at the top. I want to work with those one at a time. I'm going to bring over my interior lining panel and position that on top of the exterior panel, right sides facing, and using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch across the top of that to join that interior panel to the exterior panel at the top where the tabs are. And so when I open that up, that's what that looks like, and the little tabs are at center. You can see it like that. So I want to repeat that process with the second exterior panel and the second interior panel. And then I am going to open both of those longer combination panels up, and I'm going to position those right sides facing with the interiors aligned and the exteriors aligned. And I want my seams to fold towards the interior. Take care to align the seam right there at the interior and the exterior, because you want that nice and even. And then you can align your corners and base. Now, using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch down the right hand side. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. Then I'm going to stitch across the base of the exterior. I am not stitching in the corner. I'm going to stitch then down the remaining long edge, and I'll be back stitching wherever I start and stop. And then at the bottom of the interior, I'm going to come in 1 inch on each side. I will not be stitching the corners of the interior. Alrighty, I've stitched on the right hand side, the left hand side, across the base of the exterior, and partially across the base of the interior. Now I want to take my corners there and open those up so that the base and the side seam align. You can lay your seams to the right and the left hand side so they're not too bulky. And then you're going to stitch right across there to give this bag its depth. So I have one corner. Now I have to do the second corner. Okay, so I have my corners fashioned on the interior and I have my corners fashioned on the exterior. You don't have to worry about trimming up the interior because there's no interfacing. Now you want to very carefully turn this project through that hole in the base of the interior lining. It's so cute. Okay, at this point you may want to give the bag one more press. And while you're at the iron, go ahead and press in these seams on the interior so that they're nice and straight, and then you can stitch across that opening in the interior to close up that hole. So I have given the exterior a good press, the interior a light press, and I have pressed over the edges at the opening in the base. Now I'm going to stitch across that opening using a very scant seam allowance there, as skinny as you can go, so you can make sure that it's not going to open back up. Okay, so now we can go ahead and fit the lining inside of this. It's so darling. I love it. Oh, cute, cute, cute. Okay, so I don't recommend top stitching around the perimeter of this because I think using the drawstrings and pulling that in and out, I think there's a high probability that those stitches would pop. So I recommend that you just leave that pressed along the top. Now we want to thread through our drawstring. This may be easier to do with a large safety pin, and we're going to bring one around in a U shape so both strings end out here on the right hand side, and then we'll start at this end and bring the remaining one around in a U shape so that both strings end on the opposite side. Okay, so I've made it through with the first one. You want to make sure your ends are even there on the free side, so just line those up and adjust as necessary. And then it's time to thread through the second one. So you want to start on the opposite side of where these loose ends are. Okay, so I've made it around both sides. I want to remove my safety pin, and both ends are fairly aligned evenly. I'm going to just give this a little test. Open and close. It works very well. Make sure that your drawstrings are even and not twisted. There will be a little bit of twist at the end where you had to overlap them, but it should not inhibit the functionality. So test this well before you knot the ends. So you have a couple options here. You can line up both ends nice and even and knot those together, pull that tight, trim it, and let those ends fray pretty. You could thread on a beautiful bead. A big chunky wooden bead would be incredible. Knot that and let the knot kind of go up in the bead. Or you can individually knot them and trim or put a bead on the end of each one. I am going to knot them together for this one, and I'll just tie them both together, and then I have about an inch here at the end, and I'm just going to trim that up, and over time that will fray. And then I have a darling pieced pouch that is perfect for so many purposes. I really love the detail of this. It was such a fun, relaxing sew. I think part of that is the quilting. I think part of that is just working with so many fun, beautiful prints. There is something so special about adding just a little bit of patchwork / quilting detail to a project. I'm really excited to hear what you might use your tiny treasure bag for. Before we say goodbye, I just want to give you a couple measurements on this. I want to also encourage you to experiment and make larger ones and smaller ones. I have a smaller one here that I made, and I think these were like 1¼ inch little squares, and then I had longer tabs at the top here. The longer tabs give kind of a looser ruffle there, and I put 4 on each side, and it is smaller than this one. I think you could go even smaller than my small, but I'd be really excited to see a larger one of these, like about 12 inches would be amazing. So the distance across the center here is almost 6½ inches, and then the height of the bag is almost 7½ inches. If you include those drawstrings, you're coming in about 8 inches there. The depth is 2 inches, and then across the base is roughly 4½ inches. So it's a really good size. Please do take a minute and give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed this project. And then also, if you have some ideas as to how you might use this little pouch, please leave a comment and inspire other people to make the project. So I really want to thank you for spending this time today with me in the sewing studio. I am going to leave a link down below that will grant you 31 days of free access to my Studio 365 community. This is a creative community. We gather once to twice per week to work on a creative project, catch up with each other. It really is an intimate, safe space that you can learn and spend a little time creating something special. There is still time to join us for our macrame project that we're having in June, as well as our Sew Whatever events, which happen every Tuesday at noon. So I'd really love to see you inside of Studio 365. And as mentioned, I'll include the link for the free trial so you can see if it's a good fit for you. So until we meet again, as always, please know the creative genius in me will be celebrating the creative genius in you. And I hope you have an awesome week. I'll see you in the next segment.